One of the special things about Rising is that unlike virtually every other news program, we represent genuine debate and different sides of political issues. So I'm happy to introduce Niall Stanage's notebook. Niall, what is in your notebook today?
Thank you, Robbie. Well, Donald J. Trump will, of course, be back in the White House today. And this time around, there is no doubt about his victory. He beat Kamala Harris convincingly in the Electoral College, and for the first time in any of his 3 presidential campaigns, he prevailed in the popular vote as well. So for the 77 million Americans who cast their ballots for Mr. Trump, it's a moment of triumph and of vindication. Their man has completed an astonishing comeback. But those 77 million Trump voters are not the totality of America. This is a country that also encompasses the 75 million people who voted for Kamala Harris and others who voted for alternative candidates. Together, they denied Mr. Trump an outright majority in the popular vote once again. He's ended up, frustratingly for him no doubt, with 49.9% of the vote. So let's give that other 50.1% of America its full hearing. The reasons why so many Americans look ahead to the next 4 years with anxiety, trepidation and fear, those are valid too. And no, they're not symptoms of Trump derangement syndrome, nor evidence that the libs should cry harder. They're things that should concern any decent person. Let's start with the Trump rally that took place just a short distance away from here last night. What did you hear about that? You maybe heard that Trump danced along with the village people to YMCA, which is funny if you like that kind of thing. Or what about his suggestion that he would free the people he terms J6 hostages as soon as he takes power? That's not so funny. It's just the latest reminder of why so many people think Trump poses as big a threat to justice, decency, and the rule of law as he always has. On this day of celebration for Trump and his supporters, there are millions upon millions of Americans who will never understand how the events of January the 6th, 2021 did not forever disqualify him from holding any kind of office. To them, his success in whitewashing the events of that day and then rewriting it in flagrant contravention of the facts is frightening. And it's frightening not only for what it says about recent history, 4 years ago, but what it might say about the 4 years to come. The people convicted of January the 6th related offences aren't hostages. They're criminals, convicted as part of an effort by a mob to keep the loser of a presidential election in power. At one time, when the truth and the lies around those events were both clearer than they are today, even Republicans could acknowledge Trump's culpability. Here's Mitch McConnell on the floor of the Senate the month after. Let's listen.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president.
But it's not just about January the 6th, of course. It's also about a man who explicitly believes that the awesome powers of the presidency should be used to his personal benefit. A man who last time around demanded loyalty from his FBI director and fired him when he decided that he didn't receive it. A man who pressed his attorney general to launch sham investigations of alleged election fraud and raged when that attorney general, Bill Barr, said no such widespread evidence existed. A man who right now has nominated as his FBI director a person who has pledged to come after the people who, in his fictional dreams, helped Joe Biden rig the 2020 election. We have, of course, also elected as president a man who, last time around, corrected his false claims about a hurricane by producing a map on which someone, who can tell who that might have been, had changed the path that was actually projected with a Sharpie. That might be funny in a TV reality star, but not so funny for the President of the United States. And there's more, so much more, including policies that seem to make little sense. We have a president elected in part on the promise to tame inflation, who is proposing massive tariffs that almost every economist views as inflationary. A president ever sceptical of the government's abilities to execute its policies, who also believes that the largest deportation program in American history can be undertaken and catch no innocent person, no migrant here legally, in that dragnet. Does Donald Trump care? Perhaps not. And that in part explains why there is fear of Trump among legal as well as illegal immigrants, or why so many American women fear a president who not only nominated the 3 Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe versus Wade, but who has himself been held liable for sexual abuse. So yes, it's a big day for Trump supporters, and just as big a day, and a darker one, for those who see in our new president a man who respects neither democracy nor decency, and never has.
Look, some of the things you note about President Trump there are things I've also objected to as well. I don't disagree that January 6th was a very bad thing, and I have also held Trump responsible for the things he said causing that. I don't think it would be a good idea whatsoever to proactively pardon everyone on that day. There certainly might be cases where the sentences given, I think, are too long or are being chalked up to some kind of grand terrorist conspiracy that came into place with the Proud Boy leaders who were not even there, that I've complained about their sentencing. And like you, I do not want to see Kash Patel or anyone else just pursue the enemies of the president. But I would point to a lot of the norm violations that have occurred by President Biden, even just this morning. Pardons for people who there might be some legitimate reason to scrutinize, like Dr. Anthony Fauci, which we talked about exhaustively in our A block, so we won't relitigate here. In terms of the fitness for office, look, I get it. I'm not insane. I understand that temperamentally, this reality TV star entertainment person to a lot of Americans does not seem like the right fit for the presidency. I think this argument would be more compelling if certain Democrats or the inner circle of Joe Biden had not tried to conceal from the American people for weeks, months, perhaps years, that their man was, for different reasons, but similarly or more than similarly, unfit for any job, let alone presidency, in terms of his cognitive decline and aging faculties, and that had, I think we are beginning to understand that may have had a real impact, perhaps not on domestic policies or the agenda of the Democratic Party, but on our foreign policy. I think it might have had an impact. It had an impact about how world leaders felt about Joe Biden, and I think that mattered for the China relationship, potentially the situation with Ukraine and Russia, and I think certainly the situation with Israel and Gaza. And if they had not, and they concealed that from us until it became impossible not to do so. So that would be the conservative response. Is I'm not trying to undercut your legitimate concerns, and I'm sure I will have critical things to say. And that's my promise to our viewers, that I will have plenty of critical things to say about President Trump, including if tariffs are the first things that come down the door. I hate tariffs. I don't want them. Of course, Joe Biden did them too, so there was not an option for a no tariff person. I guess that was the Libertarian Party, which I voted for. But so I don't want to see that at all. But man, did we see a lot of things I didn't want to see from Biden.
But that may be the case. Of course, conservatives are going to see a lot of things that they didn't like to see from a Democratic president. I just don't think it is fair or reasonable to compare Trump, who continually propagated claims that an election was rigged, which it was not, and I think you, to your credit, have called out the falsity of those claims, with people around the current president putting a positive spin on his cognitive abilities, because one goes to the actual intent of the president himself to undercut the basic pillars of democracy. Another one goes to fitness for office, which is an argument we have had about various presidents over time, and I think that is a problem. I just think that Trump is, in fact, an aberrational figure in modern American history, at least, and I think that's why so many people on the liberal side have such grave concern.
I understand that. I used to think that way, but things are a little different this time around. But we are going to be having this discussion, debating it on our show many times. We hope you appreciate it, viewers, because that's what this show is all about. We've got a lot more to discuss on Rising on this historic day. Please stay tuned.